the sweet life, rolling in sunshine, rocking the good time with all our friends. Easy and carefree, out in the summer breeze, loving a simple thanks for hours on end. Right about sundown, we lay on the ground, count on the stars as they come out one at a time. Ain't this a sweet life?
Hey everybody, I'm X Factor winner Tate Stevens, and welcome to the Sweet Life Podcast, where we talk about everything from music, sports, food, entertainment, and, well, just living the sweet life. I suplexed Hayden one time. He was 300 pounds, and I suplexed him. He jumped, obviously, had to help me.
Yeah.
But, of course, I mean, I've seen it done 100 times, 1,000 times on TV. I'm like, that was awesome. And he's like, oh, man, it was so cool, because we fell into a big pad.
Yeah.
We were in a gym for gymnastics, so the floor's bouncy anyway. So anyway, I'm telling Jodey, I'm like, man, it was awesome, and he goes like, let me just tell you, I don't care how strong you think you are. If he didn't want you to suplex it, there's no way you could have done it. And I'm like, no, right, I know. He jumped, obviously. He had to help me a ton.
Yeah.
And he said, he goes, just remember we work from the left. I'm like, what does that mean? He said, everything's on the left. So your left arm would have went over his head so you can pick him up with your right arm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Well, I'm thinking, and he goes, because when I push out, like, let's say you put me in a headlock, it's always with your left hand over my neck.
Well, if you think about it, would you rather be, if you're the one being lifted, would you rather somebody be steadying you with their right hand?
Because that's their dominant, more strong hand. It makes 100% sense, So I sent the video to Jodey of me doing that, and he was like, no, great form, just wrong side, And I'm like, golly. Yeah, anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. But, growing up a wrestling fan, just watching that stuff happen, again, I never thought of that. I never paid attention or looked closely enough.
Yeah. What are your first memories of wrestling?
My first memories of wrestling, we lived in Texas. Mm-hmm. So I'd watch
the Von
Erichs. And I would watch, I can't remember what it was, what the wrestling association was down there. It might have been World Championship Wrestling or
World Class.
It might have been World Class. Or
WCCW.
Yeah, World Class Wrestling, I think, maybe. We moved to Kansas City, or Belton. We moved to Belton in 80 this summer, going into my first grade. So, what am I, 6 years old? When I moved to Belton, I was 6 years old. Then I got NWA, AWA. We got all those here in Kansas City.
Yeah,
and all the affiliates, the Florida wrestling, with Gordon Sully, and that was my favorite. Tommy Wildfire Rich, and which I think all that was Jim Crockett. I think that was out of the North Carolina or South Carolina. I think that was out of that. I think Wildfire Rich was all on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. He was my favorite, growing up. For the longest time, Tommy Wildfire Rich and of course Ric Flair and Harley Race and those guys. But my earliest live, we got to go to a lot because of Jodey wrestling. We got to come, when he was in town. Every time he'd kind of cycle through back in the territory, we'd go watch him. I remember it being so, they were bigger than life. Those wrestlers were bigger than life. You know what I mean? They were like giants walking around. Of course, I'm 6 or 7 years old, but it was still like watching giants walk around, and it's like, oh my gosh, that guy, I see that guy on TV.
Right.
Here's the only thing that I missed. When you watch it at home, you hear the commentary. Mm-hmm. When you go to a live event, no commentary.
Do your own.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? And it kind of freaked me out the first time. I'm like, where's so-and-so talking? How come I don't, I didn't hear, suplex by, whoever. And I'm like, I didn't get that. So it was a little different. So that was my first Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. Man, it was cartoons and wrestling, pretty much all morning.
Oh, yeah.
Both days. And, donuts and milk. Literally, man. I mean, the Elkins, we, lived right across the street, growing up. So I was at their house or they were at my house, and literally we'd have the little white powdered donuts. We'd get we'd have a bag or two of those on the floor, and we're just eating and drinking gallons of milk with, or we had the pleasure to go to the Baker's Dozen and get the best donuts, and get the donut holes.
Oh, dude, donut holes were the best.
Why?
I don't know.
It's so dumb. It's just a glazed donut. But when you're a kid, the donut hole is the best donut in the world.
Yeah.
But no, that was my first. You know what I mean? That was my first. That's what I remember about wrestling.
Yeah.
And then when Hayden, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Man, that was.
Yep.
You couldn't have got. And at that time, it was that was the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
And then
huge.
Oh my God! It's never been the same. And then Vince bought WCW, that guy probably, he's a billionaire obviously now, but just his vision for wrestling. I mean,
dude, I remember watching whenever he bought the WCW. Every Monday night I was flipping back and forth, and I remember watching WCW, and he was on there, and it showed. Whenever Raw came on, it had the split screen of him showing, and I'm just like, what is going on right now?
Because Raw, and then they Monday Night Nitro.
Yep.
So, and
that was for me, that's back, it wasn't back before we had the internet, but it was back before at my house, before we had the internet.
It was pre-social media, internet stuff. So you couldn't just go look and see what was happening.
Yeah,
you had to kind of wait. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You had
Which
to wait.
Was so much cooler, in my opinion.
Better.
But
I mean, sometimes it's like, oh damn, what's happening? I need to know right now. And you look it up and go, okay, all right. But back then, you waited till next Monday.
Yeah,
I watched the other night. I watched the Booker T documentary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What a great documentary.
Mm-hmm.
That dude's like a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What a terrible childhood.
Yeah.
What he had to go through and endure to what he is now, where he is now as a family and stuff.
Yeah.
Great. And no one said anything bad about him.
Yeah.
All the wrestlers were like, Booker T was a worker. He did what he was supposed to do, and he was good at it, and he was a good dude. Because there was like a 5 to 7 year period where it was just I didn't really pay attention that much to it, and being on the road and playing music all the time, and that I didn't, like I said, I'd watch it when I get home or whatever every once in a while if it was on, I'd kind of watch it and kind of half-ass watch it and not whatever. Yeah. But and then once Hayden kind of got into it, when he was old enough, like 4 years old, I don't know how many people's elbows I took. From our couch. I'd be laying on the floor and and he wouldn't say anything. He would just launch himself and drop elbows or leg drop me. And I'm like, luckily he was 4, you know what I mean? So I'm like,
oh, I thought you were talking about last year.
No, no, but so that was fun. That was a fun time,
Sure.
And
well, if you go back and you watch some of the stuff from back then versus some of the stuff now, you're just like, man, they were a little bit more serious about it back then.
It kind of seems that way, but were they?
Yeah.
I mean, were they though? That's my point. Maybe that's kind of where I was going. It seemed more real to me then, but even when I watched it with Hayden, it was almost too choreographed. If that makes any sense. And now it was still great, and I still loved watching it, and I was in every moment of it.
Sure,
with Hayden when the Attitude Era thing came. But it was almost too dramatic. Like, it was almost too put on. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, they didn't have all the lights and all the fire and all the stuff. You came out to your music or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, maybe it was more real.
It was more, not more real, but it was more like...
organic.
If a dude
almost
gets... thrown from the top rope to the outside of the ring through a table, he doesn't just get right back up and start going again. Like now, it's just like, okay, come on, dude.
Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah. Here's the thing. So I can't remember which show it is. I can't think. Anyway, he has like a wrestling school, like a bunch of them do. But he said the thing that ruined, or the move that will ruin wrestling and lets everybody know that it's fake, is a punch.
Oh yeah.
He said, if I punch you in the face, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You're gonna want to fight me for real. Like we're gonna just stand there and box. You're not trying to put me in a headlock.
No.
You're not trying to poke me in the eyes.
Yeah.
You're gonna punch me back in the face, or I'm gonna knock you out.
Yeah.
So the worst move in wrestling is the punch. Because no one can take that. It's letting people know this isn't real at all.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, we're pulling punches, we're pulling kicks. Do I really get punched? Yeah. Do you really get kicked? Yeah. Sometimes. Sometimes they're not even close.
Yeah.
Ric Flair in his thing, he said he taped a string in his doorway, and he would punch the string as hard as he could.
Yep.
Until it didn't move.
Yeah.
He knew he wasn't ever going to punch somebody in the face unless it was just truly an accident in the ring. But it looked good.
Yep.
But it was real, man. It was real to us back then, real to people now. And where wrestling went from where it was, obviously, was probably the progression of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Or because it's entertainment, but they're great athletes, especially now. Those dudes are all jacked. Back in the day, Bulldog Bob Brown had zero muscle. You know what I mean? He was just a little round guy from Kansas City. You know what I mean? But he was a Central States title champ. Yep. He was Central States champ and all this stuff. And people, Bob Brown was the guy. Rufus R. Jones. Rufus wasn't a big old muscular guy. Back then, there wasn't a lot of those. Kerry Von Erich was in great shape.
Oh, yeah.
He
looked crazy.
Yeah, he looked like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Even back then, he was that. Tony Atlas obviously was a bodybuilder wrestler or a power lifter wrestler. He was a giant individual.
Kerry Von Erich lost half of his foot, and you would have never known it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So their whole family, I watched the Von Erich story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is it David the only one left?
No, Kevin.
Or Kevin. He's the only one left. All the other dudes are dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All the boys are dead. It's like, wow.
Yep.
That's crazy. Anyway, wrestling's always been a big part of my life, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Of course, my cousin Jodey, who we're going to have on.
Yeah.
We're going to have Jodey on, and
Jodey Bruner, right?
Bruner, yeah. Jodey Bruner, or Tommy Sharpe for the wrestling fans back from the NWA days, Central States territory. Knowing somebody that was a professional wrestler, obviously my cousin, but and the stories that he has, and he'll tell some, I'm sure. So,
sure.
It'll be good, man. I'm excited about talking to him. I'm sorry, excited to talk to him. He lives in Florida now and all that. So, he'll tell some great stories about the late 70s, early 80s wrestlers and wrestling, and just kind of what he did, how he got in. I guess she's going to be my great cousin, Kay Noble, who was a female wrestler in the NWA and down in Texas and everything. And in fact, one of the best female wrestlers of that time. Anyway, so she got Jodey involved, but he'll tell that story. And it's going to be cool, so y'all stick around. My cousin, we're going to talk to Jodey Bruner or Tommy Sharpe. Stick around. So, yeah.
I'll start. AJ, my stepfather's aunt, or my stepfather's sister, my aunt, and I guess that would be what, your cousin to mine, so
she'd be my great cousin or something like that.
Great cousin. She was the #1 woman wrestler in the world. Her name was Kay Noble. Mm-hmm. And I wrestled in high school, got in trouble, and she says, "Hey, why don't you put all that energy to good use and I got in trouble for fighting in Harrisonville. In fact, I spent a little time in your county jail down there. So I decided jail wasn't my cup of tea. So I ended up I started training and used to drive from Greenview up to St. Joe, Missouri, and train with Lord Littlebrook. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was a ninjas.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I trained in his gym for about, 8, 9, 10 months. And one day my aunt came to me and Ronnie Etchison and said, "Hey, we got to talk to you." Okay, what's up? You got to be in Texas in 3 days. In Hereford, Texas. That's where you're going to start wrestling. And by the way, everything you've been learning in this, that's not what the wrestling business is. It's a work. I said, it's a what? It's a work. Don't worry about it. They'll teach you when you get there what it's all about.
So Joe, you graduated high school, and then you went up, started wrestling, and up in Lord Littlebrook's gym.
Yes.
Now, was he okay? So I know there's a ton of wrestlers because Kay was from St. Joe also, right?
Yes.
And I know there's obviously Harley Race and there's a bunch of wrestlers that came from that it's from St. Joe, or the St. Joe area, because this was a huge territory for wrestling, even way back in the early 1900s. Being a young kid coming out of a training school, they teach you the bump. You learn to take a bump. You learn
to take a bump. Learn not to kill the guy you're working with.
Yeah, because you guys are. I mean, you have to do this night after night. And you count on him to keep you safe, and he counts on you to keep him safe.
1,000%. The time you hurt somebody, you're done.
Yeah. And so, and sure, you're going to take a shot here and there. It just happens.
Part of the business.
It's part of it. Now some of them might come a little more frequently if you don't get along with one another or whatever.
Yeah, for the most part, we actually got along pretty good, Tater. I mean, you're traveling. We're traveling 7 nights a week.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
we wrestled every night.
Right.
Somewhere.
And okay, so you start out. You go to where'd you say?
Hereford, Texas. It's right outside Amarillo.
So Hereford, Texas.
Hereford, Texas. I had my first match with. I was thinking of his name all day long. Here you go. I'm having a Joe Biden moment. So hang on 1
second, okay, so you go to Hereford, Texas. We'll get back to his name. You go to Hereford, Texas.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, Hacksaw Jim. Oh, okay. That's just not a guy.
Right. I had his first match with him, and it was my first match.
Oh, wow. So what did Jim do? Was he a lawyer or a teacher or something?
No, he played football for the Atlanta Falcons and got cut.
A lawyer?
No. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He's real smart. Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Smart guy.
Yeah, real smart guy.
But
and because I remember reading something about him and a couple other guys who, they kind of had that persona of a big, dumb, oaf guy, but they were really pretty intelligent. Like George Steele was a teacher.
Yeah, I was going to say George Steele was a teacher.
Yeah. So, anyway, I mean, shoot, there's thousands of wrestlers out there, and for my little pea brain to remember any of them is good. But, so you and Hacksaw had your first matches together.
Right.
Okay, so
in Hereford, Texas.
Walk me through your first. I mean, everybody knows that there's a winner. There, everybody, it's predetermined. We all know that, right? But
yes.
So what's your finish? Hey, what's your finish move? What's my finish? You have to communicate, obviously, in the ring, so you don't get hurt. And how the flow. So was that first one just tough as nails? Was it like, oh my God?
Well, hey, Tate, it was like this. You want to talk about stinking the place up? We stunk the place. Well, because neither one knew what to do.
Right.
Now, then you wrestle with an experienced guy, and he goes, do this, do that. Because we always talk to each other in the ring. Right.
There's
constant talking going on.
Right.
And hey, I'm going to do this, you do that, bomb, bomb, bomb. So, but neither one of us knew what to do. So we spent a lot of time going like this. So, I think we got booed around a lot.
Right.
So, it was a long 15 minutes.
Right.
And because he had a better name than I did.
Right.
I did a job for him, and then we go on.
Right.
So
okay, so you come out. You started in Texas. Now, how did you just work in Texas for a while? Is that where you
I worked in Texas. Tate, what, a year? Probably a year and a half. We wrestled 3 times on Amarillo TV on Saturday morning.
Right.
Got in our car and drove to either Colorado Springs, Pueblo, Colorado, Canyon City, Colorado. Wrestled there on Saturday night. Then got in our car and drove to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Saturday night, got there Sunday morning. We wrestled there Sunday night.
Yeah.
And the guys, that was the booker there that actually owned that deal, he looked like Wild Bill Cody, the big handlebar mustache and the white and stuff like this.
Right.
A little bit crazy. So we're wrestling there one time, Tate. Big old 300-pound guy in the front row, boom, has a heart attack, right? So they stop everything, and we're all in the dressing room. And here comes the paramedics. They're trying to get him. The guy's laying out on the floor. And Mike got sick of waiting. He goes, "Hey, it wasn't my fault. Next match." The paramedics haven't even got him. He's still laying on the floor.
And you guys start wrestling again.
Wasn't my fault. Next match.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so
then we wrestled there on Sunday night, and then we went to El Paso, Texas.
Right. For Monday?
I'm sorry?
For Monday. So you wrestled Sunday night and
then Monday we were in El Paso, Texas, wrestled in El Paso, got in our car and either drive to like Midland, Texas, Odessa, Texas, somewhere in there.
Right.
And wrestled there. And then we would go Wednesday night. We were someplace close to Amarillo. And then Thursday night we wrestled in Amarillo. And Friday night we did what's called a spot show someplace close. And then we did that whole thing all over again on Saturday morning.
Good God. So, okay. And this is what people don't know. We got up and watched wrestling on Saturday morning. You know what I mean? It was on TV. Mm-hmm. All-Star Wrestling came on, and then you'd watch All-Star Wrestling, and then we'd watch, what was
Roller Derby.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Roller Derby. Yeah. And then, but we'd watch, what was the one, the territory down there in Memphis, Gordon Sully, which with Gordon Sully, we watched, what was that called?
It was WWE, wasn't he?
No. What was the Gordon? Was it?
TNT.
TNT. So he went there. We watched that. So that came on. So All-Star Wrestling was first. Then we'd watch that, and then it would go to Florida. Then we'd pick up the Florida Wrestling Channel, or the Florida matches, which was I can't remember what it was called back then. Jim Crockett was the guy, the big promoter on the southeast side of the country. But anyway, if growing up as a wrestling fan, obviously you, but I remember there and there's going to be. The stories are going to be, how how I kind of remember certain things. But I remember you were wrestling here in town at Memorial.
Kansas City, Kansas. Yeah, Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah. And you brought me back to the dressing room to meet Bob Brown. I mean, it was Rufus R. Jones and Bob Brown and all these dudes, right?
Bob Geigel.
Yeah, and I remember Butch Reed was there. Hacksaw Butch Reed was there. So, and I was a huge Butch Reed fan, right? And he was a giant guy. He was a big old muscular dude. And I just remember, like seeing him, and it was almost like, oh my God, they're just in street clothes, because they'd already changed and we're getting ready to go, and Jodey brings me back and he's like, "Hey guys, this is my little cousin, he's a huge fan, blah, blah, blah." And they were all super, super cool. Right. And I remember Butch Reed, bending down going, "Hey, young man, how you doing?" And I just thought, oh my God, he's like the Incredible Hulk. You know what I mean? Right up until I saw Tony Atlas. And then holy cow. Then I thought, Butch Reed isn't very big.
I was going to say, that's a different level.
Yeah, it's a different level of big guy right there. But
the big one was Big John Studd. He was probably and then I was in Oklahoma when I went from Texas. I went to Florida, back to Kansas City, and then back to Oklahoma. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
And when I was in Florida, it was fun because I got to hang around with Nature Boy and the guy I was a roommate with, Eddie Mansfield, the Continental Lover. He actually is one exposed the wrestling business on 60 Minutes.
So what? Okay, so you're 19. Kay says, "Hey, Jodey, you need to do this instead of being in trouble. You go do the wrestling thing." Was it something that once you did it, you were like, "Okay, I'm in. This is it. This is what I want to do"?
Well, I think the problem with it was, Tater, how we grew up.
Yep.
It was a business.
Right.
Wasn't a business guy.
Right.
It's one thing to be an athlete. It's one thing to be a singer, but you also have to be somewhat of a business guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what I lacked. I lacked the business part of it.
Because no one's holding your hand. No one holds your hand. You're just.
Oh, no, you're out there. Hey, you're doing this. In fact, they changed my name because they didn't think Jodey Bruner, couldn't remember or whatever. Because I started wrestling for Dick Murdoch and Blackjack Mulligan.
Okay.
They actually had bought the territory from the Funks.
Oh, wow.
So you don't know anything. You're green as grass.
Yep.
I've never been away from home. Didn't hardly go past the city limits of Kansas City.
Yeah.
So now you're on your own. You can't call mom and dad to get you back home. I mean, you're there.
Right. Absolutely.
You're stuck and you're trying to figure out how to make enough money to get from town to town. They're not paying us any money, $50 a night. We're driving a couple hundred miles to wrestle every night. So, I mean, it was just a brutal, brutal deal. And, but, it was a great experience coming from West Belton, Missouri.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an unbelievable business, and I think Vince McMahon really did it the way it's supposed to be done. It's Showtime. It's a good story.
Yeah.
And, when I went to work and started wrestling for them, when I got in the car business, I was teetering tater whether I was going to stay in there or not.
Right.
Hell, I made more money in 2 days working for him than sometimes I did the whole week at Oklahoma, and Texas, and Kansas City.
Well, you hear some of the stories. We watch all the backstories and everything on some of these wrestlers, some of the big, like Stone Cold and The Rock and all these guys, and they're like, man, we were working for $25 a night, $30 a night. Stone Cold said he was eating potatoes. He goes, I could afford a sack of potatoes, and I'd peel them and just eat them as I was driving because that's what I could eat. That's what I could afford with the gas money and getting there. And then he goes, we'd all pitch in for gas. The guy, a couple guys with us, whoever
we used to call it trans, charge you 20 cents a mile.
Yeah.
And one time we were up in the Indian reservations out in New Mexico, and it was me and Skandar Akbar, the Sheik, one other person with me, and I can't remember who it is, but Akio Sato and Pogo and all those guys are behind us in the car. I ran out of gas. They pushed me about 30 miles across the desert to get to a service station.
See, then it was terrible. It was a terrible time. But now, for a fan, that's, and somebody who's never seen that side of it or heard the side of it, it's intriguing that you guys had to put yourselves through the ringer and jump through all these hoops just to get to the next show. And
well, it's like that, I think, in any type of, show business type thing, Tater. You start at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to work your way up. And Vince McMahon pays better now than anybody else.
Oh, sure.
The NWA, those guys are making some jack.
Yeah.
But we didn't make that money.
Yeah, and like I said, that's what you hear. You hear the guys going from $25, $30, maybe $50 a night, and then they get signed with the WCW, which was Ted Turner at the time, and he goes from making maybe $20,000 a year, maybe working 6 nights, 7 nights a week, to $75,000 a year guaranteed money. They're like, oh my God, we've made it, And then
you got to remember back when Ted Turner, they had North Carolina and all that, the guy that owned North Carolina, well, there wasn't any other sports to deal with. They didn't have football teams, they didn't have basketball teams. Wrestling was it.
Right.
So it was a sellout every night.
Yeah.
When Ric Flair was wrestling Blackjack Mulligan and Ricky Steamboat.
Oh yeah.
All those guys.
Yeah. So you come out of Texas, come back to Kansas City. And you're doing your thing. You're like, okay, you're figuring it out. Obviously you had to figure it out a little bit because you did it for so long. You go from Kansas City back to Oklahoma, then to Florida, right? So now you're
in Florida. Yeah.
So is that where you felt like you were the best at your craft when you went to Florida?
I've been in it long enough to learn to create an identity for myself, Tater.
Right.
And, you learn the ins and outs, and then, hey, you've taken enough bumps, you've had enough bruises, you've had enough no's that you understand it's a business.
Right.
And Florida was good.
Right.
Other than, we still weren't making any money.
Right. Yeah.
And, when I was here in 1980, 79 and 80, Tater, remember, because you've been down here, I-75 goes all the way from Tampa to Miami, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not that way when we got here. We used to have to come down 301 through Parrish, then down to hit 41 and take it to Naples.
Oh, wow. So
then get on Alligator Alley down in Naples. So that wasn't, the roads weren't developed, and
right.
But it was a great thing. But I'd had Jeremiah then and Tina, and I just was teetering. What should I do?
So you had to be in some sort of shape. You had to work out whenever you could.
The hardest thing about wrestling was timing, Tater.
Okay, yeah.
The timing of it all.
That makes sense.
Not rushing.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the crowd involved in it.
Right.
And that's where you became a craftsman, hey, what do we, it's not how fast you go.
Right.
Sometimes it's just how deliberate you are in going. So
right now, Joe, so when, let's say you were wrestling in Kansas City, did you ever have any problems getting money?
No, I never had to chase money.
You didn't have to chase money?
Never had to chase money. They paid us once a week and never chased money. And one time I went to Leroy McGurk. I said, Leroy, the place has been packed every night. I was hauling around Andre the Giant in my car. I said, Leroy, now here's a blind man, right, Tater? And he goes, I said, it's been packed. Why do I only make this amount of money? He goes, can you see all those people out there? I said, did you see all the people out there, Leroy? I gave them all the tickets. Nobody bought any tickets. I just gave them all the tickets. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, they just, they were not.
Well, they had to make money, right? They're the promoter. They got to make money. That's how it works. All right. So who do you think was your favorite guy to work with, travel with, work with, in and out of the ring? Who was your favorite guy, if you had one or a couple?
Oh man. Cause we worked with different people every night. The guy to travel with was Harley Race.
Right.
He was a man.
Right. Yeah.
He was probably pound per pound the toughest guy I was ever around in my life.
Really?
Oh my God. He was the toughest guy I was ever around in my life.
Yeah.
I actually, Mr. Pogo, I spent a week wrestling with him one time. That was a lot of fun.
Right.
And, we were all over the place. It was never one guy. It was one night here, one night there. I wrestled Pat O'Connor up in Kansas City one time. That was pretty fun.
Right.
Yeah, the man of 1,000 moves.
Yeah.
And, New York, when I went to New York and wrestled for the WWE or WWF, that was some really cool times up there. Randy Savage and JYD and all those guys was up there.
Yeah. Now, okay, so Harley Race, and I've heard that before. I've heard that he was one of the toughest dudes on the road. Like, not just in the ring tough, you know what I mean, in the wrestling world tough, but get out of your car and mano start throwing.
You didn't want to jack with him.
Right. That's what everybody said. Like, I've heard that. I've heard that he was one of the toughest dudes.
He had a wreck doing 120 miles an hour back in the 60s in a car.
Right.
he was steel. This one whole side of his body was almost completely pinned in steel rods, Tater. And he went on to lead CMSU in rushing yards after the car wreck. And they told him he'd never walk again. And he was left-handed, Tater.
Right.
And everybody thought he was right-handed, and he would just boom. I mean, I watched him take a guy one time and have him literally crying under a pool table in a bar down in Texas. And Harley kept telling him, please just leave me alone. Leave me alone. Oh, you're one of those phony wrestlers. Just leave us alone. We're just trying to have a little fun here. Blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, Harley had him underneath a pool table with a pool stick, and just the guy was crying when Harley got he told my aunt one time they were in the Leawood Country Club having dinner, and he told my aunt, Kay, go up there and spit in that guy's face. She goes, Harley, I don't want to go spit in his face. Kay, go spit in the guy's face. He goes, if you don't, I'm going to hit you so hard in your face that you're and my aunt was no slouch. My aunt could take care of herself.
Right.
And finally, she walked up to the guy walking down the aisleway. And she walked up and spit in his face. And Harley walked up, knocked the guy out.
God.
Wow.
Ernie Ladd one time tried to jack with him.
And Ernie was a big, big man.
And Harley looked at him and said, listen, you got to tell the count of 3 to get out of the way. I'm still going through that door with or without you, Ernie. Ernie was trying to strike down in Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
And Harley was trying to go in there and wrestle. And he said, we're on. Yeah. Harley goes, I'm going in there to wrestle. That's what I get paid for.
Right. Right. So Harley, you traveled with him mainly. Is that who you travel with the most?
Well, him, Ric Flair was fun to travel with, and then it was just us underneath guys. I spent a lot of time with Skandar Akbar back in the day.
Oh,
and the Sheik.
That's all. See, like I remember that when you're saying these guys' names, and I immediately the images of those guys are in my head, and
takes you back.
It's so cool. I mean, that's why wrestling it was so real. Mm-hmm. For us, I mean, and I know AJ's a huge wrestling buff. He knows he's got more knowledge about wrestlers and all that than most. But and that's why we're doing this podcast. So we just talk about what we like on our podcast. It's kind of like whatever we want to talk about. So
you talk about the Sheik. Remember, I don't know if you remember that old black on black Cadillac I had.
No.
Well, when I started in 1976, I had a 71 Cadillac sedan to build because my aunt told me, go get a big car. So I go buy this Cadillac. Well, it's got tinted windows, wire wheel covers on it, Missouri license plates on it. So we're out in New Mexico in the Ruidoso Mountains. I see these 3 cop cars go flying by me this way. I don't think anything of it. About 15 minutes later, they come and pull us over. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Joe, my dog's snoring.
I was going to say, I thought I heard like your dog moaning or something.
Yeah, no, he's over there asleep. He's snoring. And I'm like,
hey, listen, won't be long. I'll be doing the same thing. 15 down here in Venice. But anyway, Tater, the cop pulls us over. I said, can I help you, sir? He goes, it's against the law to drive on the shoulder in New Mexico. I said, well, I'm sure it's that way all over. He goes, let me see your driver's license. I hand him all my stuff. He goes, what are you guys doing? I was the smallest one in the car. You got the Sheik and you got the his buddy, who he was managing. And I was 235 pounds. I was the smallest guy in the car, and that tinted windows and those Missouri license plates.
Yeah.
He never thought we were running drugs. He goes, open up your trunk. I said, no problem. He goes, open those bags. I had just bought a quart of mezcal tequila down in Juarez, Mexico the night before. Well, it busted in my trunk and in my bag.
Oh, no.
I said, sir, you don't want to get in that bag. Yeah, open the bag up. I said, no, you don't want to. Just leave that stuff alone. Open the bag up. You can open it if you want, sir, but I'm not opening it. He opens it up and he goes, holy cow, shut it back up. No, you shut it up. Thank you. They let us go. Go, don't drive on the shoulder anymore. Okay, sir.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah. Now, you got along? You said you got along with everybody pretty good, right?
Well, you have to.
Right.
You know, Tater, you have to. You know, if you hit somebody, you go, hey, brother, sorry about that. As long as you don't do it again,
right,
everything's fine.
Right.
But if you do it once or twice, then yes, you're going to have an issue with somebody.
Right.
And we actually had more issues with the fans, Tater.
Oh, I bet.
And,
I was going to ask you.
We were in Oklahoma one time in Tulsa, and me and Crusher Lawler was tag team against Tommy Gilbert, and I can't remember who it was back in. So we were the bad guys. We were the heels. So I grabbed a chair, hit Tommy Gilbert. Well, when I did that, I see some fan cold cocks my boy right in the mouth. Crusher Lawler. Next thing you know, there's everybody in the whole front row's got chairs, and they're swinging them and stuff like that.
Oh my goodness!
So you don't ever do that again. So the fans were actually tougher than, because we had a respect for each other, Tater. I mean, hey, we were out there to do something, and but hey, guy probably hit me the hardest was Big John Studd.
Really? Well, he was.
Oh my God,
he was a giant guy too.
Well, and he shows Tater. He had me in a bear hug, and he goes, "Hit me in the face." No, hit me in the face. And he kept going harder, harder, harder. And then he goes like this. No, like this. And he goes, bam! It just hits me right across the shoulder. And I went right on the mat. And it wasn't a work. That was all real.
That was all real?
But he did it fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was just, he goes, hit me harder. In the face. No, I can't hit you harder.
Right. I'm not going to hit you that hard.
Well, it's hard to hit somebody when you're really up here close to them.
Right.
Hit somebody hard, but you're hitting him. And he goes, no, harder, harder. No, do it like this. Bam! I'm like, holy stud.
Wow.
So he was probably one of the toughest guys. Everybody else was just like pretty loose and just have some fun. And, when I wrestled up in you talk about stories, we were up at, I don't know if you ever knew it, but Jake the Snake, that snake that he had. Remember the snake?
Oh, yeah.
Well, in the wintertime, Tater, he'd put that thing, actually traveled in the trunk of a car in a burlap bag.
Right.
And then he would take it and put it in the shower and put hot water on it, warm water, so the snake would move when he got it in the ring. Because the snake would go into hibernation mode when it was cold, right?
Yeah.
So I'm walking, I've wrestled, I'm walking into the shower, and here comes JYD at about 140 miles an hour past me. What's going on? Don't go in there. I'm not going in there. Well, I turn the light on, and that snake raises his head. There's things coming out. That snake's laying in there underneath the shower, the warm shower.
Getting warm.
Jake didn't want to have a shower with the snake.
Oh, my God.
JYD was doing about 140 mile an hour through.
That's awesome. What? So you said you traveled with Andre, and now how was he?
Awesome.
Was he just a great person to be around?
Yeah.
Now
his hand, if he put his hand over your face, it was like a baseball mitt.
Well, we'd both heard about and watched the Andre the Giant story and all the behind the ring and out all that Dark Side of the Ring stuff, and it was like Andre, because he had wrestled in every territory, because he was such a draw, because he couldn't stay very long in one territory, because he can't beat everybody up in one territory, and then he has to move to the next one, beat everybody up, move. Right. So he was such a draw for everybody, for all territories.
That was a freak.
Yeah, but they said if Andre liked you, you were okay. But if he didn't like you,
he was a true French Canadian.
You weren't, and you weren't okay, meaning you weren't getting over. No. He wasn't. He would really kind of make sure you knew where you stood.
Oh yeah, you were the small. You were at the bottom rung of the ladder. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and that's we'd seen that and heard all about those stories, and obviously how much the man could drink, how much alcohol he could consume and still be alive.
He would drink a case of beer before the match.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then he would go to the bar and tell them, fill up the cooler.
That's nuts.
And sit there and drink it all night long. My boy could drink the vodka, and he was 7'4", 407 pounds.
Yeah, I remember the story of him going in for back surgery, and they had to give him so many extra pain, like just to knock him out because his body was.
Hey, let me turn on some lights here, Tater.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Now, growing up, obviously, one of my favorite wrestlers was Tommy Wildfire Rich. Did you ever work with him?
Nope.
Never worked with Tommy? Nope.
He wasn't in any of the territories I was in. Even when I came here, it was the Von Erichs.
Right.
It was, Ric Flair, Eddie Mansfield. I was in a battle royal with up in St. Louis one time with Dick the Bruiser. That was we had a 12-man battle royal. Dick the Bruiser was in it. That was fun. And Harley and stuff like that. I wasn't a battle royal with it. That was good times.
Yeah, see, and that's just a free for all, just having fun, basically, right?
Yeah, you're fun. You just get to go up and hit anybody. Yeah. Didn't matter. You just hit whoever was close to you. You just hit them.
That's fun. That's fun. So
yeah, it was that was a good thing. It was a wonderful learning experience, Tater.
Right.
Because it was a business. I wish I'd have known more about business.
Right.
Hey, and back when I graduated high school and got out of high school, there, the gym, the weight room was at the end of the football field, and they hadn't racked a weight since 1958 or 59.
Right.
At their building. Remember where the weight room was, AJ?
Well, it's new high school. He went to the new high school.
Yeah.
He went to the new one?
Yeah.
Well, the old football field wasn't at the new high school. It was actually there off of Washington Street. And when you went to the weight room was a steel building that they hadn't racked a weight since, 1971. They were all rusted and everything else. So we didn't grow up with it, know?
Right.
And I never started lifting weights until I went on the road.
Right.
Wow.
Who was one of the just a maniac? Who was, when you were out on the road, you're like, this guy is just off the rails. Fun, but just off the, like, you really had to watch because he was one of those guys that were like, golly, this guy is a psycho. If he drives, we're going to die.
Yeah, no, we didn't have that.
Really?
We didn't have, I drove a lot, Tater, because, I'm going to drive and get the trans money.
Right.
I want the gas money.
Yeah.
And Skater Akbar, he drove. One time we woke up, we were driving from Colorado Springs, Colorado, down to Albuquerque. We wake up, sagebrush is going over the car. He passed out going down. We're in the middle of I-40. And in the middle, we said, okay, Skinner, you can't drive no more. But Harley drove fast, but he never drove out of control. I mean, Harley was a crazy driver.
Right, just fast all the time.
Yeah, just as fast as it'd go. And
I don't know. I just loved it. And that's why we started talking about it in our last podcast. We started talking about wrestling, and I'm like, I'm gonna call Jodey and get some stories and kind of how it was back then, how it was back in the day, in the late '70s, early '80s wrestling.
Well, we were running around telling everybody it was real. We should have told everybody it was. We should have told everybody, it's a showtime. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like I said, Vince did it. He took the reins from what his dad had, but his dad was old school, and that's what you guys did. You were old school wrestlers. You had your things, you had your gimmicks, and you had your heels and your baby faces, and you had all that thing, and
the WWF or WWE They were all about gimmicks.
Right.
And what I mean, look at the gimmicks. Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
Macho Man Savage.
Yep.
Hulk Hogan.
Right.
Well, we didn't have, he had Harley.
Right.
He had Ric Flair, the Macho Man.
Yeah.
He was about the most flamboyant guy we had.
Right.
And then Dick the Bruiser and those guys, but they were just, you know, it was just what it was. It was just a totally different, you know, Ric Flair, and then the Funks.
Yeah.
You know, Tori and Terry.
Yeah.
But they weren't that flamboyant.
Right. They were just names. They were just like the Von Erichs. You knew Baron, like I was thinking of Baron Von Raschke or whatever.
I had a match with him in Kansas City.
Yeah. And remember he had the claw. I mean, he was just like,
yeah, the claw. I think I got it.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's like, that was our mean guys. You know what I mean? But it did seem like a lot of those wrestlers came through Kansas City. Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan was here. You know, even back before he was really Hulk Hogan. Like he was, I guess they called him the Hulk or whatever they called him first. But you know what I mean? I mean, he came through Kansas City and wrestled. I mean,
he actually started Minnesota. They beat him like a drum up there.
Yeah,
didn't win a match.
Didn't
win a match.
Right, and it's like, but everybody came through Kansas City.
You made that circuit, Minnesota, and you know it's funny, Tater, because I was at the largest sporting event that's ever been held in Florida. I wrestled here in Florida at it. Kerry Von Erich and Harley Race, 92,000 people.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
At the old Sombrero.
Yeah, that's crazy to think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was the first time they ever got blood on TV, and Von Erich got blood on Harley Race, and 92,000 people there. It was unbelievable.
Wow. That's nuts. That is nuts, man. Well, dude, look, I'm not going to take up. You have anything, AJ? You want to ask questions or anything?
Well, one question. What was the reason for you kind of getting out of the business? Was it just was it like an injury thing, or just kind of?
No, not at all, AJ. I wasn't making any money. I had a son that was 11 months old, and I'm driving from Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and God told me I needed to come home and be a dad.
That's a good reason.
And drove right past the arena and never wrestled. And then I wrestled some time for the WWE, but ended up going from wrestling to working in a warehouse out in Richards, Cabower, delivering parts to the A-10 War Dogs.
Yeah.
And wrestling on the weekends, and then I got hurt. And I ended up getting into the business in 1981. And I've been in it ever since.
Yep.
Wow.
So it was a great, for where I came from, the wrestling business was awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm grateful that you did this. I'm grateful that you talked to us today on our show, which is, like I said, this is something that AJ and I we just said, hey, let's do a podcast, and kind of got the stuff, and now we're doing it, and it's a lot of fun, and we just talk about things that we want to talk about, literally music and food and whatever, and now wrestling, which is awesome. So, I am like I said, I'm glad you did it. I'm glad we were able to make this happen tonight, and so.
Tater's the only one in the family that got talent. The rest of us, Tater got all the talent. By the time he came along, all the talent went right in that little gene pool, which is awesome. I mean, none of us have our name on the Belt and Water Tower. I think I got mine in a jail cell there.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. That's this week's podcast with my cousin Jodey Bruner, or Tommy Sharpe, wrestler from the late 70s, early 80s, with some cool stories, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, growing up, wrestling was real. It was real for me. And you know, later on, it was real for Hayden for a while, you know, with Stone Cold and The Rock and all those guys. And
it dawned on me after the fact. We were talking about whenever he's talking about the weight room down in Harrisonville.
Yeah.
That's the old wrestling field house. That's where we had our wrestling practice.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, down in the field house by the football field. But
the old metal shed.
Yeah, it dawned on me like a little bit later on.
Yeah,
after he's talking.
Yeah, that's funny. So I think we're going to have a part 2 to this, man. I think there's going to be a part 2, maybe part 3, even to this wrestling thing. Yeah. Because just talking to my friends and family and stuff, everybody's like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about that? We got to get this. Make sure you talk about this. So there's definitely going to be a part 2 to the wrestling thing, and maybe have another wrestler on. You know,
yeah.
I think it would be awesome. You know,
yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
reach out to a couple people and see if we can't get another wrestler and get some more cool stories.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So
I'm all about it.
Yeah, me too. So listen, make sure you subscribe, like, 5-star ratings, do all of that. Give us a review. Leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. If you like it, great. If you don't, great too. It just makes us better. So make sure you leave a review, though. Or if you have a question or comment about a past episode or maybe something you want to hear on a future episode, make sure you leave that in a note. Right?
Absolutely.
So, all right, guys. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Tate with AJ as always.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see you next time.
Ain't this a sweet life?
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening. Want to ask a question for a future episode? Well, hit us up on Facebook or Twitter with hashtag Sweet Life Podcast. And be sure to give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date on the latest news and information for the Sweet Life Podcast. And we'll see you next time.